most important point is, how was the food? How was the music? All right, I'll see you later. Listen, thanks everybody for coming out. And let me thank the City of Newport, the East Side Restaurant, and Kyle Chadburn, the musician, for all of the help in putting on this event. You know, pre-COVID, and I wish I could tell you we were beyond COVID, we are not. Half a dozen people I know have COVID right now, so be careful. Pre-COVID, we used to do these things on an annual basis. We got sidetracked, but I'm happy to tell you we're back going forward, and we're doing these events all over the state, and we'll continue to do them. I love coming out to Newport and the other towns around the state to chat with people and meet old friends. What I want to do is talk a little bit about some of what is going on in DC and has gone on the last few years. Talk about where I would like to see our country go, and open it up to your questions and comments. In the last few years, I think we've been making some progress on issues that have been talked about for a long, long time, but not much has been done. I think you'll all recall that for decades, politicians have been talking about the high cost of prescription drugs in America, and wondering why we pay 10 times more in some cases than our friends on the other side of the lake. So I'm happy to tell you that we haven't gotten where I want to go, but we are making some progress. If you are a senior on Medicare, you will not pay more than $35 a month for insulin, which is a big deal. If you are a senior who has chronic problems and take a whole lot of drugs, starting in January of 25, you will not pay more than $2,000 no matter how many drugs you take. That's a big deal as well. A year, $2,000 a year. You know, and we all know that there's some people who have serious illnesses, multiple illnesses, take a lot of drugs. So max that any senior on Medicare will pay is $2,000. Also, very importantly, you won't see the immediate impact of this, but it is a big deal. The reason that our friends over there in countries all over the world pay substantially less for prescription drugs than we do is they negotiate prices. What does that mean? It means if you are Medicare and you're spending tens of billions of dollars a year, obviously what you do is you sit down and you talk to the drug companies and say, hi, how are you? Let's chat about a reasonable price because we're spending a fortune on prescription drugs, right? That's what every other country on earth does. We don't. We have not until recently. Until very recently, the pharmaceutical industry could and has charged us any price they wanted. Doesn't matter what it is. So in some cases, we pay 10 times more, some cases 15 times more for the same exact product sold in other countries. They could charge us anything they wanted. Taking on the pharmaceutical industry is not easy. They are one of the most powerful lobbies in Washington, D.C. They have endless amounts of money. But we have finally, and I applaud the president for doing this, forced them through legislation that we passed a couple of years ago to finally sit down and negotiate. That has taken place, and we're seeing a significant reduction in the price of certain prescription drugs, some of the most widely used in the country. And next year, that number will expand. So finally, we are doing what other countries have done for decades, negotiate prices for prescription drugs. So that's a big deal, something that I have worked on for a while. In fact, just today, literally this morning, Eli Lilly, one of the major drug manufacturers in the country, announced that they are, to some little degree, lowering the price of their weight loss drug. Major producer of that drug is Novo Nordisk, a Danish company, producing Ozempic. You guys heard of Ozempic? And another product for weight loss. They're charging us 15 times more than they charge people in other countries. So I'm going to have a hearing with these guys, I'm chairman of the relevant committee, late September, and we're just going to ask Novo Nordisk why they're charging us so much. But I think we're beginning to make some progress. Eli Lilly announced a small reduction in prices. I suspect Novo Nordisk will follow suit. In terms of infrastructure, that is our roads, bridges, water systems, wastewater plants, broadband, etc. We have, a couple of years ago, passed the most significant infrastructure bill in the history of our country. And in our small state, I'm on the relevant committee, we brought in $2 billion for infrastructure. So what you will be seeing in the next couple of years is, I hope, improvements in our roads, culverts, bridges, wastewater plants, water plants, broadband, etc. A whole lot of money is coming into the state for that. And in the process, creating a whole lot of jobs, which is another issue, because in fact we need more workers to do that work. I don't have to tell anybody, I hope, in this room, that climate change is not only very real, but it is a threat to our planet and the future for our kids and grandchildren. In this last couple of years, we have passed made the most significant investment probably in the world in terms of transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. I don't have to tell anybody here that even in our small state, we have seen in the last couple of years some really devastating flooding around the state. And similar problems are existing from coast to coast. The West Coast, they're looking at unprecedented levels of terrible forest fires. Midwest, they're looking at drought. We're looking at extreme weather. In Asia, they're looking at heat that sometimes goes to 120, 125 degrees, which really is not sustainable for human beings. So we have a major crisis, and I'm proud that we are beginning to make the kind of energy transformations that we have to make. And as part of that, I got a provision in one of the very large bills, a $7 billion provision, to help middle-income and lower-income people install solar panels on their rooftops. All right, let me ask the question. Anybody here have solar on their rooftops? All right, what kind of reduction are you getting in your electric bill? Do you know your price, cost?
We just pay the basic fee. We don't have any costs above and beyond what they charge for a service fee.
Right, who else wants to comment on that? Reduction in prices? Yes?
Yeah, we had the air conditioning going because of the heat.
Right.
And the bill came to like $40.
$40, much less than what used to be.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, Jane and I put in solar, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. I think we're paying about $20 a month right now. We used to pay over 100. So the point is that solar will save you substantial sums of money on your electric bill. Problem is, you need an initial amount of money to put that solar up. I don't know, depending on how big your installation is. I think it costs us $14,000, and you get tax credits, etc. But a lot of people don't have that money. So what our bill is about is helping low and moderate income people get that initial payment to install solar on their rooftops to take advantage then of the lower prices that they will receive, as well as cutting carbon into the atmosphere. So we're working with the state. I would like to see this move a little bit faster than it is, but the hope is that a lot of people in Vermont will now be able to afford to put solar on their rooftops. Another issue that we have made some progress on is, I don't have to tell anybody here that as a result of really disastrous trade policies over the years, which I voted against, as a matter of fact, NAFTA and permanent normal trade relations with China, we have lost thousands of factories in America. And what corporations did is said, why do I have to pay an American worker a decent wage? I can go to China, I can go to Mexico, I can go to Taiwan, wherever I can go and pay people with really low wages. That's what they did. And we lost millions of good paying jobs. I am happy to tell you that we are beginning to rebuild our manufacturing base in America, creating hundreds of thousands of new jobs in new manufacturing in some of the state-of-the-art areas, including chips that are vital to the future of our economy. So also, for those of you who have grandchildren, we have forgiven, canceled student debt for over 5 million Americans, which is a big deal. A lot of these kids graduate college deeply in debt. They have to spend years paying it off. I've talked to people who hesitate to get married, they can't afford to buy a home, paying off their student debt. So we cancel student debt for some 5 million people. All right, where are we now? Where do we want to go? The most important issues, generally speaking, facing our country are issues that we spend very little time talking about. And I learned a long time ago that it's not hard to come up with answers, but it is hard to ask the right questions. So if I were to ask you, how is it that in the richest country in the history of the world, which is what we are right now, how is it that we have more income and wealth inequality than we have ever had in American history? How is it that we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right? How is it that we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs? How is it that we have a child care system which is dysfunctional, et cetera, et cetera? And the answer has a lot to do with money in politics. Right? And we don't discuss this enough. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that you all have one vote. But there are people out there who are multi-billionaires who can start what is called a super PAC. You know what a super PAC is?
Yeah.
Super PAC is an organization in which if you are a billionaire, you can put as much money as you want. Tens of millions, hundreds of millions into that super PAC. And then that super PAC will put ads on television and do all the political stuff. So you could be a candidate, doesn't raise a nickel, and a super PAC funded by billionaires does all the work for you. So what these guys do with these super PACs, billionaires, is they go after people who stand up for working families, and they support people who protect the interest of the wealthy. We will not make progress, in my view, in addressing many of the major crises that we face unless we overturn this disastrous Supreme Court decision called Citizens United. You all know what that is? All right. And what Citizens United basically said, it said, look, we all believe in the First Amendment. You have the right to express any point of view you want. But what they said is, yeah, in so many words, billionaires have the right to express their political point of view in an unlimited way. And it means if they buy elections, they buy elections. And that to me is dead wrong. So I believe we've got to end Citizens United and move to public funding of elections. All right, let me touch on a few other issues. And one of the accomplishments, by the way, of the last few years, which I don't talk about enough, is what's called the PAC Act. And that is, what we did is for our veterans, we passed a very substantial piece of legislation that said any veteran who was exposed to toxic burn pits, you know, in Iraq and Afghanistan, elsewhere, you had terrible environmental problems. And for a long time, veterans were having a difficult time accessing healthcare, getting the benefits that they needed. This legislation went a long way in protecting the interests of probably millions of veterans. All right, well, what are some of the problems that we face? And now I'm going to ask you a question, and don't tell me what I want to hear. Tell me what you think. Healthcare in America. Working well, not so good? What do you think? Who wants to say it? What do you guys think?
Needs help. Better than before, but worse.
Yeah.
It is neither healthy nor caring nor a system.
Not bad.
My wife has to take a medication currently and will for the rest of her life that keeps her alive. The cost is $14,000 to $16,000 a month, every month. Fortunately, our insurance brings it down to only $600 a year. Then we hit our next level. However, if it means that everybody's insurance premiums are skyrocketing because of that.
That's right. You're right.
And without it, she would be long gone.
Look, I take a few drugs, and I didn't mean it. Prescription drugs prescribed by a doctor. And they cost me very little. But my insurance, despite being on Medicare, private insurance is sky high. Like the two of us, $20,000 a year. So it is, I mean, that's the world. It's the world we live in. Your point is quite right. So many people say, hey, well, you know, the insurance covers prescription drugs, and it does. But you're paying a huge amount of money for your insurance, and that's the deal there. All right, other thoughts on the healthcare system? Yes, ma'am.
I have Medicare A and B, and I have supplemental, and I have a prescription drug plan through Medicare. have to say that it's all working rather well.
Good.
Because I don't pay a thing, except for my prescription drugs, which I have a problem with and which you just addressed. But because I have A and B and I have the supplemental, all of my services, except for the copay for Part B on an annual basis, I never get a bill.
Good.
It's great.
Woman right there, yes, ma'am.
I really get tired of listening to the news and hearing about, oh, it's an entitlement. A third of my Social Security and a small annuity that I have goes to pay for Medicare and health insurance. A third. And I would like some of the people in Congress to know that.
Other thoughts on healthcare?
Yes.
Yes, sir, right here.
Well, as in this town of Newport and other small.
If you could stand up, that'd be great.
Other small towns throughout, not just this state, but throughout the country, have difficulty recruiting physicians,
Yeah.
nurses, physician's assistant. I have 2 knee replacements, and there's one orthopedic surgeon here in Newport to see me, so I had to wait 2 months just to have my annual checkup on me. So I don't know if that's being addressed in anywhere in the federal government
Yes.
or in the state.
Let me just answer that one. And I want you all to hear this, because it's true and not widely discussed. We spend something like $13,500 on healthcare total for every man, woman, and child in this country. So a family of 4, 13, 26, $52,000 a year for a family of 4. That is twice as much as they spend over there, and about twice as much as most other countries. Despite that huge expenditure, as you've indicated, we do not have, it's not just Newport, believe me. It took me 2 months to find a dermatologist in Burlington. We don't have enough doctors. We have a major nursing crisis. We don't have enough dentists. We don't have enough mental health providers. We don't have enough pharmacists. All right? So we're spending twice as much, and we don't even have the medical personnel that we need. And despite all of that, and let me, this is an issue I'm chairman of the committee that deals with it, so I get into it a little bit. How does our life expectancy, how long we live compared to other countries? Anyone know? We live longer, we're a very rich country, so I presume we're living longer than other countries, right? What?
We are depreciating the actuarial scales that they use for like settlements and suits and whatnot, that devalue us and is continuing to devalue us financially as well as our life expectancy going down.
In terms of the life expectancy, everybody, if you were to put up on a chart and say, what is the goal of all of this stuff that we're talking about? We live in a society. What do we want to accomplish? What would success look like? What success to me would look like is people living long lives, happy lives, and productive lives. Right? In terms of life expectancy, how long we live, we are living significantly shorter lives than many other countries. Okay? Japan, I think 6, 7 years longer than we do. Europe, a few years longer over there. But what's even worse than that, which is hardly ever discussed, is the life expectancy gap between people on the top economically and working class people is over 10 years. So if you're rich in America, you will live at least 10 years longer than if you're working class. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but that is an outrageous fact unto itself. And by the way, that's not just access to healthcare, as important as that is, it's the stress that many working people live under every day and the impact it has. Yes, gentleman over there.
So I am actually one of those primary care doctors.
Oh.
I was boarded in internal medicine, 30 years clean record. And there's some reasons why there's not many of us. I could work, okay. But if I go to work, I feel like I'm the Civil War soldier that spent 4 years in the Union Army, and 5 days before Appomattox, I decide to extend my tour of duty and get killed the day before Appomattox. The shortage of primary care doctors started when we got thrown out of our practices and we have to go work for health systems. If we could be our own businessmen and women, there'd be no shortage of it. As far as the healthcare system, it is a crapshoot show, okay? It's a law and order problem. So what we need is we need a set of insurance companies, okay? They need to be price controlled, just like a lot of us doctors and other healthcare entities have had that for the public good. And then they have to, by law, is if I write something that their patient needs, the insurance company covers it. That's it. No BS. It has to be enforced. And the government can get together with us doctors, send us newsletters, okay? The guy who sprains his wrist, okay, needs a wrist splint and ibuprofen, not an MRI and an orthopedic consult, okay? But if I don't give it to him, he'll complain, and I'm not protected. So there just has to be law and order. You need an insurance. I don't think the Canadian system will work because we're a different country. Okay, a lot of us people don't trust the government, and there's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, okay, good points. And I want to tell you all, again, as chairman of the committee, we are doing what we can, and it ain't easy, to grow the number of doctors and dentists and nurses. What you're talking about is doctor is talking about, I think, prior authorization. So right now you have a lot of doctors who we trust. I mean, that's what they're there to do. You go to the doctor, you say, then you need this and that medicine. They got to phone it into some bureaucrat in an insurance company who will tell them, sorry, it's too expensive, you can't use that one.
Getting paid to say.
Right, exactly. They make more money if you don't prescribe it. And we're trying to deal with that issue as well. In terms of getting doctors into rural, underserved areas, when I was chairman of the budget committee, we tripled funding for a program called the National Health Service Corps. I don't know if that rings a bell to you. And what that does, it says if you're a young person and you graduate medical school, we will forgive your debt completely. And some of these young people are graduating $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in debt. We'll forgive that debt if you practice in an underserved area.
The problem with that is that debt is taxable. So if you got $150,000 in student loans at 10% interest, and the state of Vermont is taxing at 8%, and you're paying 10% interest, and the federal government is taxing that loan forgiveness is taxable.
I know that, but we have been.
Then you'll have the principal level.
It ain't perfect.
65.
It's not perfect. The system is broken. But all I'm saying is we have tripled funding, and we are seeing more doctors go into underserved areas around the country. All right, anything more on, the bottom line of healthcare? This is my own view. Some of you may agree with me. Some of you may not. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Bernie, I just want to put a plug in for the VA.
Yep.
I was living out of state for a few years. When I came back, they told me it would take me 8 months to get a PCP, and I'd had cataract surgery, and I could not get an ophthalmologist at all at any time, anywhere in the state. But the VA came through within 2 months. And I don't know about complaints about the VA in other parts of the state, but I love these guys.
No, the VA, I tell you, we were in St. John's very early, somebody just said the same thing. We are very lucky, and we worked hard on this. We have in Vermont great people who are running the VA, and they're doing a good job. They have their own problems, because there are massive efforts to try to privatize the VA. So those that I won't bore you with. But right now, I am very proud of it. I think veterans are of the quality of care that our veterans are getting. But what I wanted to say, and it juxtaposes with the VA, it would seem to most people, I think, let's acknowledge that healthcare is tough issues. Things change every day, new technology. What do? It ain't easy. No country has solved it completely. But the starting basis, it seems to me, should be, how do we have a system which, A, guarantees health care to all people as a human right? You're poor, you're rich, you're young, you're old, doesn't matter. Health care is a human right. Everybody's going to get sick. People are going to have babies. People are going to have serious injuries. All right? Should we guarantee health care to all people as a human right? Every other major country has said yes to that. We have not. That's number one. Number two, the function of today's healthcare system, and not too many people in Congress will tell you this, The function is not to provide quality care to all people. The function is to make huge profits for the insurance companies and the drug companies. And in that sense, the system is working very, very well. It is a total success. Drug companies, unbelievable profits. They pay their CEOs. I had a guy from, I think it was Merck, on the committee, before the committee, guy makes $50 million a year compensation. All right? They do stock buybacks. So these drug companies do phenomenally well, the insurance companies do phenomenally well. Unfortunately, the American people do not do well. So I believe, I would disagree with the doctor, I believe that we do need something like a Medicare for all single payer program. Everybody in, and it becomes comprehensive health care. And you can do that without spending a nickel more than we're currently spending.
I wasn't disagreeing.
Oh, okay. Okay, yes,
I'm
sir.
saying there may be a better mechanism.
With regard to health care for all as a right, with regard to health care for all as a right, what would be the benefit, what would happen with regard to the insurance companies then?
They're gone. One of the things, right now, Medicare, one of the absurdities, and I trust everybody agrees with this, if you spend $1 on healthcare, you want it to go to a doctor or a nurse or medicine. You don't want it to go to some bureaucrat telling a doctor what he can or cannot prescribe. You don't want it to go to a basement full of bill collectors who are hounding you because you can't afford to pay the $200,000 bill that you ran up in the hospital. We are spending hundreds of billions of dollars every year on bill collection, on all kinds of administrative crap. And if you have a simple system, what is the simple system? You're an American, you got health care, you walk into the doctor's office. My name is, Mary Smith. Good, here, Mary, sign your thing. Good, get the care you need. That's it. You don't have a layer of bureaucrats trying to figure out ways to not cover you when you should be covered, etc. Comprehensive care. You save hundreds of billions of dollars doing that. Medicare's administrative costs are a fraction of what the private insurance companies are. So the problem here is not a healthcare problem. The problem is a political problem. We are taking on enormously powerful people with unlimited amounts of money. Drug companies themselves have 1,800 well-paid lobbyists in Washington, D.C. Insurance companies have lobbyists up the kazoo. They make campaign contributions. They are a tough crew to beat. But we are making some success in terms of prescription drugs. The fight has got to continue. I want to see someday, just think about what it would mean. You mentioned your own family, but every family has that story. What it would mean not to have to, you're a working parent, not to worry that when your kid gets sick, whether you should delay going to the doctor. We lose about 60,000 people a year because they delay going to the doctor because they can't afford the co-pays or the out-of-pocket expenses. 60,000 a year. So, in my view, we're going to have to continue this fight. It's a big fight, but I hope we win it. All right, I've talked enough. Any questions that you have for me on any subject? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make a comment about this discussion, which I think is really, really very important. I lived overseas for 12 years in many of these countries that, well, they all did. They all have national health care. And people always say, oh, national health care, that's too socialist, and we don't want that, blah, blah, blah. Well, that was 4 different countries I lived in, and each one of them had national health care, but they also had private health insurance and private hospitals for those elite people who weren't happy with the national health care. And it worked very well.
Right. I mean, different countries structure it in a different way. But bottom line, in all of those countries, I think throughout Europe, everybody gets health care as a human right. Each system is a little bit different. Right. And again, I want to point out that probably in every one of those countries, they're spending half as much per person on health care as we do in our country. Okay, I see a hand right in the back there, yeah.
So there's a very great book that I hope you've read, Senator. It's called The Truths We Hold by Kamala Harris. And you hear her voice, and you see who she is. And I recommend it to every person here, because it'll knock your socks off about what a wonderful person and candidate she is.
I haven't read the book, but I do know Kamala, we served together in the Senate. Yes, sir.
Yes, Barney, concerning healthcare, I think we also have to take a good look at what we as a population are doing to ourselves. With the additives that are being put in our food, with the processed foods that are in our marketplace, with the rampant use of, uncontrolled use of drugs and tobacco and alcohol, what are we doing to ourselves? And what kind of impact would that have if we could address those causes? Because what we're treating are symptoms, and we have to start taking a look at the causes.
Thank you very much, and you're absolutely right. Let me just mention, ironically enough, just yesterday, we did a hearing on this issue, on the impact of processed foods and sugar, etc., on mostly young people. So here's where we are, and just literally yesterday, CBS is doing a documentary, and I was talking to them yesterday in Vermont. Right now, since the 1970s, we have had an epidemic in this country of obesity and people being overweight. And some 90% of diabetes cases are tied to people who are overweight. We are spending some $400 billion treating diabetes right now. We expect that number to continue to rise unless we deal with this issue. So what is the issue? The issue is that you have food companies that are putting a lot of money, billions of dollars on ads, getting kids hooked onto food which is high in fat and salt and sugar, etc., additives, and also which in many ways is addictive. And these kids, we have now 1 out of 5 kids, I think, in this country who are overweight, and everything being equal, stand an unfortunate chance of coming down with diabetes and other illnesses. So it's funny that you mentioned that today, because we're right now doing everything we can to get the FDA to start putting labeling, strong labeling on food products in a way that we haven't seen it right now. Other countries are doing that. If you drink a 20-ounce bottle of Coca-Cola, if my memory is correct, you are absorbing 13 teaspoons of sugar. How many parents do you think know that? So we're trying to do labeling. Also, what we're trying to do, you asked me what we're doing. What we're trying to do, and I've introduced legislation to do this, and other countries are doing it. Prohibit TV ads to children on food. So in other words, what they do, these companies will hook the kids, 4-year-old kids, onto a product. Mommy, I need this product. And we're trying to do what other countries are doing, is eliminate those types of ads. So it is a very big issue that we are working on. Yeah, very briefly, yeah.
Again, a little backup question here. Why are we allowing countries like Venezuela to send in applesauce for our kids that's laced with mercury and lead?
Good question. Well, because the FDA is doing a not particularly good job. The FDA does a reasonable job with drugs. They claim, I don't know that it's necessarily true, they don't have the resources to do what they should do for food. It's the Food and Drug Administration. I see a hand way in the back. Yes, ma'am.
I'm probably not the only one here that's noticed, and maybe you're all over this, but about 10 days ago, I picked up an eye drop ointment, and it's same size box, half the size in a little plastic bottle. And this is for people need it multiple times a day to keep their eye from getting inflamed. So my question is 2 points. Does pharma realize that we are no dummies? We realize, not just in pharma, but in food products, they're putting a smaller amount in a smaller bottle, same size box, charging us more. And then this little plastic and more garbage goes into the ocean. So my second part is, where are we at on recycling all this plastic and or creating some more better packaging, less packaging. Am I the only one that's realizing that you're paying?
You've got a sympathetic audience.
I was in Chicago last week at this Democratic convention, so I went on, I had to, somebody I knew needed an Advil, you know what I mean, Advil. So I went to the, 7-Eleven. I bought a package, I thought you get, a package of Advil. One Advil in the bag, you know what it costs? $1.80. One Advil. All right. So yes, I think people are noticing that. Yes, ma'am.
I attended the Hunger Vermont conference a couple of years ago, and I continue. I'm the what we call me the Health and Equity Coordinator for the Nulhegan Tribe of the Abenaki. At that conference, SNAP program was going to give, because of COVID, everybody had to stay home, seeds to the families so that the families could grow their own vegetables throughout this whole pandemic. And a lot of I thought this was terrible because nobody knows how to do this anymore. So my point is education. I just received a grant where I'm going to be able to teach whole food preservation to anybody who wants to learn, whether it's water bath canning or this is where we need to go because nobody does this anymore.
Well, I think it ties into the point the gentleman made a moment ago about disease prevention. I think, let me just divert for a moment, tell you something. It was a poll that was done by the Pew Foundation, I think, PEW, a very reputable organization, and they asked people around America, and we did it in Vermont as well. Any of you ever see the Bernie Buzz, by the way? Yeah. Okay, so we did it through that. And it was a very simple question, and it ties in, I'm going to get to your point in a minute. All right, question was, do you think that somebody like you, that you think that you are better off or worse off than somebody like you would have been 50 years ago? You understand the question? If you're middle class, you're working class, you're low income, is somebody who was like you 50 years ago, were they better off or are we better off today?
They're better off back then.
All right, I'm going to ask that question. How many people think, hold on, here's the question, wait a minute. Here is the question. How many people think we are, it's a broad question, and obviously there are pluses and minuses. How many people think that we are better off today than we were 50 years ago? How many people think that folks 50 years ago in many ways were better off than we are today? Pretty split, a little bit more for today. And the answer is, obviously, there are things today that are enormously wonderful. I mean, there are medical treatments that did not exist 50 years ago. People would have died that could be cured right now. All kinds of electronics, we all have our cell phones, et cetera, et cetera. But to get back to your point, there is something that is missing that existed 50 years ago. And that is, just in terms of food, 50 years ago in this town, in Newport, you had probably, I don't know, dozens and dozens and dozens of farms, right? People produced their own products. Anybody here remember Tony Pomelo? Yeah. Tony moved to Burlington, and I knew Tony well over the years. We worked together on a number of things. He grew up here in Newport. And what he said was, that when he grew up here, his family came from Quebec, and he said they were very poor, but he didn't know that they were very poor because they lived on a farm, they grew their own food. They had a garden, they, slaughtered a cow or a pig or whatever it is. They ate pretty well. Didn't know that he was poor. And you knew the people who produced the food. They were local people. The quality was good. It was not the kind of pesticide use that we see right now. And there was a sense of community, I think, which we're not seeing right now. We're getting stuff from all over the bloody world, and we don't know who produces it, and so forth. So, that's the point I wanted to make, yeah.
And I also, our tribe also started a food shelf.
Good.
Most of my clients for the food shelf are seniors.
Yeah.
And what I do, I make the effort is to buy local.
Good.
All my vegetables are bought local. All of the dairy is bought local, so that we're supporting our.
All right, one of the challenges that we have, and it is not easy, and we're not succeeding, and I'm certainly not succeeding, is I would like to see a revitalization of family-based agriculture. I think people would like to know where their food is coming from, and know the people who are producing that food. It is not easy. And all over this country, we're seeing the decline in Vermont, and all over this country, we're down to like 500-600 dairy farms in Vermont. Most of them are much larger than used to be the case. So it's a very tough issue, but it's something I would hope that we can turn around. I see a hand over there. Yes, ma'am.
I think we can do something about it.
I think we can do something about it in Vermont, because if we took the kids and we said, here's a curriculum around family gardening and growing and expanding and taking extra courses and preserving, etc., we could take that in and tie that into the point I want to make with the real artificial food category is 50 years ago, scientists weren't looking at that sweet spot in the brain that engineers food where there is not a turn-off signal in the brain. So we have to educate children about that so that they don't feel guilty when they're sitting there consuming these junk foods. And it's not a fat problem, it's a carbohydrate problem in these junk foods. So I think we could simultaneously with the children, through education, we're small enough in Vermont to do it, make this initiative where they learn about gardening and they learn about these real artificial foods and what they do in the brain and how it's insidious that these food scientists are allowed to kill us this way.
All right, good point. Let me get to people. I haven't asked the first question yet. I see a hand over there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, quick.
No. Oh, yes, right here. Yes.
You're gonna get this back over. This is totally irrelevant, but I just want you to know that when you strode onto the stage at the convention last week, I thought those look like really comfortable shoes.
That is relevant. Yeah.
Okay.
What? All right, thank you very much. Did you remember anything I said other than the shoes?
Oh, God, yeah.
All right, that's
Yeah.
good. My wife always tells me, no one remembers what you say, it's how you look. Occasionally somebody remembers something I said. Yeah.
How you doing, Bernie Sanders? Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I go to a lot of different events, and it's a lot of passionate young people, but they don't know how to put their pieces together. So I was wondering if you could whisper in somebody's ear to put workshops to help some of these young, passionate people connect the dots, basically.
You know, it's interesting. We don't have 5 hours to discuss it.
Jamie Raskin has a program.
Jamie Ruskin has?
Yeah.
It's a whole bunch of different topics.
I think a couple of points, just very general observations. Do not underestimate the stress that young people are going through today. I mean, COVID did a number on all of us, it did a special number on them. It broke their educational patterns, their social patterns. I talk to teachers who say that their kids, because of these things, have very little attention span. They got to do 15-minute breaks because kids can't concentrate. Their social interactivity has been impacted, etc., etc. On the other hand, and I would love to see this, and we're not, there is so much work for young people right now. There was a time when unemployment 10, 15%. Today, we are in desperate need of young people in every area. We need young people in healthcare. We need young people to rebuild our infrastructure. We need young people, you name it. We need the young people. And how we're trying. We've got a big grant coming in that's going to go to, what are they called? Haley, what are they called? The centers? The tech centers, right. We've got a $4 million grant. And what we're going to hopefully get it. And what we will do is have those tech centers start training the kids for the many, many good paying jobs that are out there. You can make, for good, better or worse, you can make more money being a plumber today than a teacher. All right? All right, and there are all kinds of jobs that we desperately need to have filled. So I think we have to start paying attention to young people, get them the training they need to do the work that is sitting out there needing to be done. All right, let me get the people up and ask the first question, make the first comment. Yes, sir. You got a mic right there.
Oh, thanks. I don't know if you've been following our local news, but our local high school, I found PCBs and they're in the process of putting up tents. And I'm thinking that our kids here in the Northeast Kingdom have already lost 2 years of instruction because of COVID, and now we have this disruption as well. And I can't help but notice that when the same thing happens in Chittenden County, they immediately tear down their high school and build them a new one. I don't know if you have any influence here with state government and the people that make decisions here, but this area deserves and needs some assistance.
I know that. And I was aware that, in Burlington, where I live, the high school was torn down. It's going to be, I think, $130 million to build a new one. All right, other questions or comments? People have it? Yes, ma'am.
About the DNC convention, I think it was an obscene amount of paper that was used for all of those signs, I love you, Bernie, and whatever they were.
Wasn't me, they were. Trust me.
It was just, I mean, there was nothing that came from the heart. It was all, okay, we're handing those cards out now, and it was just not leading by example. This is a planet that we're trying to save, and we're having a convention like that with 4 bazillion balloons. It was great, beautiful. Why?
Because it was a television show. Everybody knows it. It's a 4-day, well-produced TV show. That's all.
I have something to say about Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama issued a challenge to the entire country to have students, young students, create a meal that they grew and organized themselves. In other words, my granddaughter did this. She grows chicken, she grows food,
Great.
and she went to, they flew it to Washington. Michelle, you know, is very tall. And my granddaughter and her mother are like 5 feet tall. So it was a very interesting thing to see. But more importantly, it is I think it's a matter of education. I know as a child, as a 5-year-old child, and you'll recognize this, I was picking up horse manure in the streets in Brooklyn, fertilizing my grandmother's tomatoes in the backyard in the tenement. And I learned about farming then, and that's one of the reasons why I moved to Vermont. We have a farm.
Good. All right, other questions or comments, sir?
Yeah. I just want to thank you that over the years, you've been an instrument in foreign policy wisdom. And your positions that you've had, like in Ukraine and Gaza and Israel, have been exemplary of what politics should be in this country. And I want to thank you for all of the wonderful things you've done for our foreign policy.
Well, all right, I'm going to ask people, thank you very much. Foreign policy, in reality, I'm on 5 committees. I chair the Health Education Committee. That's where I spend most of my energy. I'm not on the Foreign Policy Committee, but I do think that on certain issues, people have got to speak out, and I am prepared to do that. All right, I'm going to ask you a hard question. Are you ready for a hard question? Yeah. All right. Israel and the war in Gaza. All right. Now, don't tell me what I want to hear. That doesn't do me any good. I don't know the exact number, are providing Israel with tens of billions of dollars in military aid. Should the United States continue to provide that military aid so long as this war continues? Raise your hand if you think yes. Raise your hand if you think no. Okay. Thank you. All right, this is a very contentious issue. I am in a minority. I am very pro-Israel. When I was a kid, I spent months on a kibbutz in Israel. But I am not pro-Netanyahu. Netanyahu is, to my mind, a right-wing extremist who is in a cabinet with people who are out-and-out racists, anti-Palestinian racists. And you don't know what is going on in Gaza right now because the media is not telling you. But it's not just that 40,000 people out of a 2.2 million population have been killed, most of whom are women, children, and elderly people. It's not just that over 80,000 people have been wounded, often a lot of children. It is not just that, again, 2.2 million people, that's 4 times the size of Vermont. These people have been displaced. 90% of these people have been driven from their homes, not once, but twice, and to other places. These are little children, it's a lot of kids there. 65% of the housing, think about it from Vermont's perspective. 65% of the housing has either been destroyed or seriously damaged. Their healthcare system has been made virtually inoperable. Most of the hospitals no longer provide care. Their physical infrastructure has been destroyed. There is no electricity, to the best of my knowledge, right now in Gaza, and there's raw sewage running around in the streets. There are 12 universities in Gaza, 12. Every single one of them has been bombed. And then on top of all of that, because Israel has refused to allow humanitarian aid to get through, we're now looking at children by the thousands facing malnutrition and starvation. So as you can guess by my tone, I am pro-Israel, but I am going to do everything that I can to see that your tax dollars and my tax dollars do not go to prop up Netanyahu and his murderous war against the Palestinian people. Israel had a right, Israel had an absolute right to defend itself. Hamas is a terrorist organization. Don't think otherwise. They are really bad news guys. And they attacked Israel, killed 1,200 men, women, and children. Horrific. Okay? Israel had a right to defend itself against Hamas. It does not have a right to go to war against the entire Palestinian people. That's kind of my view. Not everybody in Washington agrees with me. Most of the people in Congress do not. But that is the view, and I'm interested with hearing what you have to say. All right, maybe a question or two more. Yes, a young woman back there.
Thanks for saying I'm young. That's not really true.
Well, compared to the rest of us, you're really young.
First of all, thank you. And it's a little, sorry to bring it back to our community after that, but thank you for all of your service and your voice. But right now here also, we do have a substance use crisis happening. And I just wanted to know how much of it is on your radar, because there's 2 major pieces that we feel are missing to be able to support our people who are struggling and their families, and like the perpetuation of this. And that is prevention in the schools. So, COVID did hit our families hard, and many families don't have routine. We don't have children going home to mothers and fathers making their dinner. They're not going to work. They're struggling or housing. We have very difficult housing struggles right now. And so we need support to do prevention and early intervention in our middle and high schools. And we're doing that here in Newport because Newport is so amazing and innovative. However, we do have this big problem. We need more prevention, and then we need workforce development, we need sober living, and we need housing, and we need to create a system of care that is not just stopping in places, that perpetuates the cycle, and it puts all the burden back on our emergency departments and back on our treatment centers, and then it raises our taxes and our Medicaid dollars, and we need to really look at changing that system. And I wanted to put this in your ear so that you can take this back and understand how important this is to our entire community.
Thank you very much, and very well said. You said it better than I can. I mean, this is a problem in many percent. Johnsbury has a problem, Burlington has a problem, not just Newport. And in fact, it exists in many parts of this country. Somebody could turn that off, please. I'll just say this, and you're right. Addiction is a very, very difficult issue. And you need a comprehensive approach to dealing with it. It's not a 10-day therapy session. Unfortunately, it's a lot longer than that. And it has to do with, a whole lot of things. What I will say, maybe wrap this discussion up. some of you may remember in February, March of 21, a few months after Biden took office, we passed something called the American Rescue Plan. People remember that? And what it meant is that many of you and families all over the state and country got $1,400 per person in the midst of a terrible moment. We extended and expanded unemployment benefits. We prevented people from being evicted from their homes. We put a huge amount of money into child care, into housing, et cetera, et cetera. That was an emergency program. The best that we can get was an emergency program. And one of the things that we did in that, one provision, was a $1.9 trillion bill. And I was chairman of the budget committee and helped write that bill. Just to give you an example, one small provision said if you are a working parent, we're going to give you $300 a month for your kids because it's really hard right now to raise a kid if you're a working class person. You know what that did? That lowered childhood poverty in America, that one provision by 40%, gave parents the opportunity to raise their kids with a little bit more grace and dignity. All right, that was an emergency bill. Some provisions expired after 1 year, some expired after 3 years. We had a lot of money in that bill. What we tried to do, and the president was very, very good on this issue, we tried to do something to say, okay, we dealt with the COVID emergency reasonably well, but now we got to deal with the structural problems facing the country, including addiction. And we did something what we call Build Back Better, which would have dealt in a very significant way with housing, with addiction, with healthcare, with education. It would have been, to my mind, the most monumental bill passed in maybe since the 1930s. We got something passed in the House and in the Senate where it was divided 50 to 50 without being political. We had 0 Republican support, and you had 2 corporate Democrats who did not support us. We failed. But that vision of having the government begin to address some of the structural problems, healthcare in general, opioid addiction, the causes of it. You know, when I was a kid, we knew that heroin was a killer. We knew that people who did heroin either ended up dead or in jail. Those are your options. I don't know, and maybe your point is, that kids know what these drugs will do to them. And we have to do a far better job in education and the very difficult job of treating people who are addicted. You're absolutely right. All right, well, let me conclude by saying this. I think we are making some progress as a country attempting to address some of the very serious issues we face. Look, let's not, if you feel sometimes overwhelmed by what you're looking at the television, you're not the only person. That's right. I mean, you're not, these are tough times. And, you know, I read a little bit of history and I'm thinking back that maybe, you know, the Revolutionary War, and these guys began the country and they put their lives on the line. You know, maybe the Depression, enormously difficult time. Maybe World War II, and we were not prepared to fight 2 wars simultaneously. And maybe today. I mean, this country faces a pivotal moment, and I'm not going to get political here because this is not a political meeting. But the challenges that we face, and we've discussed some of them today, are enormous. But our job is not to give up, and our job is not to turn to despair or depression. It is solvable. All of these issues are solvable. But we're going to need to do things and act in a way that we haven't done before. And bottom line, for me, the way I end up phrasing these things rhetorically, is that we need a government that works for all of our people and not just the billionaire class, which is what you have right now. We are the richest country on earth. Dealing with opioid addiction is expensive. Can we afford it? Yeah. Can we afford to give more tax breaks to billionaires? No. Can we afford $1 trillion military budget? I don't think so. All right. So we need to be thinking hard about these issues. But at the end of the day, this country has struggled through very, very difficult moments. I believe we can do it again. But let's put our shoulders to the wheel and let's go forward. Thank you all very much.